A dangerous inmate who escaped from Dorchester Penitentiary last Friday was on the loose for only about 5 hours before he was recaptured. But in that time, he wreaked some serious havoc. He assaulted a parole officer, stole her car, drove to Memramcook, where he stole another car, then fled across country to Fredericton, where he led the police on a chase, committed theft from a business, tried to steal another car while committing a robbery, and then slammed into 2 police cars, injuring 2 police officers. 29-year-old Jeffrey McLean was apprehended. He's back in custody now, but there are many questions about how he got away in the first place. The union that represents corrections officers says something like this was bound to happen because the officers don't have the tools they need to prevent it. Doug White is regional president of the Union of Canadian Correctional Officers, and he is joining us tonight from Fredericton. Mr. White, welcome. Glad to have a few minutes with you here tonight. You yourself have a lot of experience in the prisons. You've been an officer yourself for about 30 years. How do you explain how a man like Jeffrey McLean was able to get away from what's supposed to be a secure facility like Dorchester?
Well, that's a good question, Steve. First off, it was a Dorchester minimum unit in Dorchester, so there's no fence or anything around it. And unfortunately, in the afternoon, around 3:15, he, like you said, assaulted a elderly female parole officer and stole a car. And took off and went a short distance, run off the road, and stole another car, and thus assaulting somebody from the public. As far as his escape, we do have questions how he ended up in Dorchester minimum unit.
Well, let's get to that. He's not supposed to be in minimum. Why would someone with his criminal record be in a minimum security environment?
That's a good question. In correctional service, we do rating scales, and the inmates are either classified as minimum, medium, or max.
Right.
He came out of medium, and he was just revoked from day parole, and he was put into Dorchester. He spent a very small amount of time in the Dorchester medium unit before he was overrode and sent down to the minimum. So that's our question, especially with somebody coming back off the street, is how, when they classified him, he came out of high medium, but yet he was overrode and sent to the minimum unit.
Is this about saving money? Is that why an inmate of this kind would be moved from medium into minimum? Does it save a few bucks?
No, I don't believe so, because we do have 2 medium security institutions in the region, and there are bed spaces available, so I don't think it saves a whole lot of money.
When you say your officers don't have the tools they need to prevent this kind of thing from happening, allow me to ask you why they don't have those tools.
Because it's a minimum security unit, and they're not supposed to have the violence that we have in our medium and maximum security institutions. For example, in our medium and max, all officers carry on their belt handcuffs and OC spray. Right. And they also wear a stab-resistant vest. In the minimums, they don't have none of this gear. They don't wear stab-resistant vest. They don't carry handcuffs on their person. They don't carry OC spray.
Well, what do they have, Mr. White? What kind of tools do they have?
They have uniforms and verbal communication, basically.
That's it. There's no pepper spray, no restraint devices of any kind.
They can go get pepper spray, but it's locked in a central control area, which the minimum unit in Dorchester is very big, and at most times very hard to get to, pretty near impossible to get to. During this incident, it was in the parking lot, so there was absolutely no time to run to the central control area to pick up any OC spray or handcuffs.
You say that this particular inmate overpowered a parole officer?
Yes, in the parking lot.
But was the parole officer there by herself? Or did she have some sort of protection?
No, it was in the parking lot of the Dorchester minimum, and I believe she was probably leaving work at the time, and that's when he assaulted her at her car, took her keys, and stole the vehicle.
So who would have been watching him at that point?
Nobody. Around the minimum, you see inmates walking out around the parking lot, out around the housing areas, anytime during the daytime.
So to parse your words, you're saying a couple of things. One, he shouldn't have been in minimum. And second of all, he should have been in an environment where corrections officers have some tools to restrain him. But neither happened.
That's correct.
Have you talked to management about this? Have you discussed this specific case or cases like this with the management?
I had a discussion with regional headquarters yesterday, and I told them, I said, I have very big concerns how this inmate came back off a day of parole, ended up in a medium security institution for a very short period of time, and his security classification was done. He came out of high medium, and he was sent back to a minimum. So I informed them I definitely have concerns on behalf of the correctional officers that work there. And our number one job, Steve, is public safety. And unfortunately, we have incidents in the institutions every day, but it's never publicized. And unfortunately, this time it affected members of the public.
Two things just before I let you go. What do you believe that corrections officers in that minimum security environment should have? Should they have pepper spray or some sort of device at their disposal to stop a prisoner or an inmate?
If they're going to continue to put the type of inmates that we've seen over the last couple of years into the minimum secure units, they definitely should have pepper spray and handcuffs at the very least. Yes.
Finally, how often does this happen? Obviously, we heard about this case, but do we hear about all the cases that happen?
Any case that I've heard tell of in the last couple of years has just been people just get up and walked away from the institution. This is the first time that I can remember that somebody escaped using violence against staff.
We appreciate getting some insight from you, and we'll look forward to trying to get some answers from Corrections Canada. Doug White, thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Doug White is the regional president of the Union of Canadian Correctional Officers. He joined us tonight from Moncton. I misspoke earlier and said Fredericton. Indeed, as you can see from the background, it's from our station in Moncton. Back with more here in just a moment on CTV News at 6.